suggested Harrison was a bit of an anomaly. "Little polite rows of toffee-headed robots," John Lennon once said. "That's all any of the teachers were after." To George, seen through the illusion of so-called adult authority seemed to be all the justification he needed to forever reject its dictates, even at such an early age. Like so many others in the creative sphere, it was George himself who ultimately found the courage to reject the mores and values he saw around him. From those nosy mothers standing at the school gate to the unenlightened, interfering masters he met at school, George Harrison has never borne fools gladly. After leaving Quarrybank High School for Boys in 1953, George was enrolled at the Liverpool Institute. On his first day, he was jumped from behind by a local roughneck, which did little to bolster his enthusiasm for his new school. At first, Harrison did try and make the best of things by attending classes and keeping up with his homework, but soon, as George put it, the old rot set in, and he once again declared a war of inattention on all things relating to his life at school. A true rebel, by his 16th birthday, George was at the very bottom of his class at the Liverpool Institute, and often in deep water at home. Although he made no bones about his feelings for school, he was secretly nervous about leaving without benefit of even the most basic qualifications. While most of the other students spent their Wednesday afternoons panting around the school track, says George, I was content to take a notebook and dream up some sketches. They were mostly from my head, not from anything around me. I was fonder of sports, too, especially swimming, but I guess in the end I was fonder of art. Louise Harrison's first indication that George was seriously interested in music came when he was just 13. She happened to notice that his school exercise books were virtually covered with crude little sketches of guitars. Soon afterwards, she bought her son a cheap 3-pound acoustic from the father of one of George's classmates. Surprisingly, George didn't seem that interested and relegated the gift to an upstairs cupboard for the next 3 months. When he eventually picked it up, however, he found it frustratingly difficult to learn and almost packed it in several times before finally making a little progress. Sitting up some nights until nearly dawn with his mum to encourage him, he practiced until his fingers bled. Still marking time at the Liverpool Institute, George shuttled back and forth to school on his father's bus from Speke to Liverpool in a dreamy haze of guitars and pop stars. The long, rambling ride took up to an hour each way, which also allowed him the boyhood luxury of mucking about with the other lads. One of these boys, the son of a cotton salesman and the estate midwife from Allerton, was especially good fun. His name was Paul McCartney, and although he was a year ahead of George at school, the two quickly became firm friends by early 1955. In an exclusive 1983 interview, Paul McCartney remembered George's parents.
Harry Harrison and Louise Harrison. Harry was a bus driver who was a great man, lovely man, but forthright, very sort of straightforward. He would run over a dog with his bus rather than swerve and avoid. And quite rightly too, because he might kill people. I remember always being a little bit disturbed about that hardness. But he was a good lad, Harry. He was a real nice man, sweetie. And Louise was lovely. She was a quite hard lady, but, you know, soft side. But she was a hard lady. I remember her pouring a pan of water on some fella she didn't want to answer the door to. She'd tell you, Louise.
John Lennon, however, was apparently quite skeptical about admitting such a veritable baby into the group. How would it look for someone as talented and popular as John to be caught consorting with someone so young and obviously undistinguished as George? What would his mates think, let alone the ladies? After all, the whole point of being in a band in the first place was to look like a big man, and that was admittedly a little tough to do playing with a teeny-bopper guitarist like George. Beatles insider journalist Richie York reflects on the nuts and bolts of George's relationship with John.
You've got to understand that the whole way through it. You know, George was like John's son. I mean, he idolised, worshipped John. You know, John was everything George always wanted to be, I guess.
In the end, however, Harrison's exceptional musical skill, coupled with McCartney's insistence that George be brought on board, overruled John's initial reservations. George played raunchy for them in a cellar club called the Morgue, then hung around the band until he was invited to play with them. He was formally accepted as a member on February 6, 1958. McCartney, however, tells a slightly different tale. He says George's audition took place atop a Liverpool